Here we are. Thank you. Welcome for being here. Thank you for being here. Welcome. And we are going to talk today about the evidence and research and share more about the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, which is one of our year-round industry sector collaboratives. We have members all here today to share some exciting research. And I will go ahead and just kick it off. I have the pleasure of working as the co-director of Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, which we will now start calling MCURC. And in the last year prior, I was the research program manager. So I got a chance to work with everyone really closely on research. Very exciting. I will just give you a quick background of the collaborative, which is that this founded after the Menus of Change. A couple years later, there was an idea between CIA and Stanford to say, what if we actually tried to test this and see what happens with these Menus of Change principles in dining halls, in kitchens? How could we influence student behavior? And this research collaborative came about in 2014. The goal here and the vision is really to cultivate the well-being of people and planet, one student, one meal at a time. And we have now over 70 members of the collaborative, largely in North America, some in the UK and in Singapore, who are enacting this vision every day. And what it really comes about is it's, I know Christopher will mention this as well, what's unique is this is not a research collaborative with only researchers who are part of it. Instead, we have, even on this stage, chefs, sustainability managers, academics, representing, of course, we include students as part of this, and who did I forget? Dining directors, senior university administrators. And all of this is really important because we have an opportunity to conduct both academic and operational research, which means that sometimes the research projects lead to academic white papers on studies, and some of them lead to operational guides for the industry. So, and that's why you're all here today. We are serving over 4 million meals every day. It looks like my slide at the beginning of this summit was incorrect, because that was out of date. And that is because now we actually have both self-operating dining programs and contract management company programs, member institutions that are part of the collaborative. So that leads to cumulatively the influencing over 70 billion meals over the lifetime. And the theory of change here is that if we are capturing and influencing dietary patterns while students are in college during really formative years, that really impacts broader change in the industry. They are going off into different professions across a range of careers, and they become future parents and continue to be consumers. And that is a way for us to kind of capture the time that we have with them while they're at college and show them a new way of eating that's more healthy and sustainable. The research model that MCURC is built on is a kind of one-to-many. So there's a pilot institution, and you'll hear some projects like that today, especially from Christopher. A study will begin at one university, and then it extends to many sites, and that happens through MCURC. So by being part of this collaborative, we can propose an idea that has maybe had a pilot research design, and then we extend that and oversee projects that occur concurrently at, let's say, 5 different universities at the same time. So as a result of that, you can see that we're actually building stronger evidence. So we move from hundreds of data points to thousands, and kind of a limited number of variables to more. So we can capture more information. And also to understand the generalizability of the research. Does this work only at Stanford, or would this work at different types of institutions, both public and private, in rural and in urban areas? So our research agenda is built around these 3 pillars. We promote plant-forward diets, aim to reduce food waste, and try to build food literacy, both of staff and of students. So the projects you'll hear about today connect to these 3 principles, and of course connect to the broader Menus of Change overall. I think that is where I'm going to leave it. We're going to have a presentation from all of the panelists, and then we'll open it up to questions. So the one thing to note here about questions is we will have sort of a game show moment where you can come up and actually ask a question here at the mic that's on a stand. So yesterday, what happened is if people did have questions, you could kind of queue up near this mic and just stay seated and then stand up when you're ready. So I'll pass it over to Christopher.
Thanks. Are the tech folks going to monitor our time or not? Are we on our own?
I hope we're not on our own.
How many minutes do I have?
You
okay,
have
you cut
about
me
10.
off. Ready?
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
Okay, so super fun to be here. Got to tell you that Abby has been a godsend. Oh my God. She's like masterfully, like behind the scenes, helping everything run. It has just been so helpful, and I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you.
But this is common. I just get to hang out with dietitians, sustainability directors, chefs, operators. I'm on meetings all the time with them. It is a blast. It's super exciting. And this was really the best study we've done so far from a research perspective. And a real challenge in a lot of cases here is the currency of me as a researcher is publications, and the currency of a chef is satisfaction. And those don't always go together. Client satisfaction and research rigor. But it's really fun working and trying to make this happen. This was a simple study that we did with labeling. We didn't make any new recipes. We just made unapologetically delicious recipes and changed the labels. And it was all indulgent labeling or basic labeling or nutrition-y, geeky labeling. And we had a PhD student run this, and we pulled in a psych professor from Stanford whose specialty was mindsets. She drew on the resources of a linguistics professor. And so we just got all kinds of disciplines, and I'm not going to show you the results. They were just fun. The key here for me was just the collaboration with different folks. And after doing it at Stanford, we did it in all these other universities and spread this out, and got a publication in the top psych science journal that's out there. And so just the novelty of this was the multidisciplinary nature of it, which is really very novel. And so that was our best study, but Peggy Policastro has done some great stuff at Rutgers that she also spread in other places. And this is testing this message about the fear of fat. And in my field of nutrition, really, we're not that afraid of fat anymore. We're still probably down on saturated fat, but unsaturated fat and avocados and nuts and seeds and fatty fish is still good. And we were stunned to see that students still fear fat. Like we asked them to pick from a list at a table as they went into the dining hall, which was the healthiest. And it was stunning how many of them picked the low-fat things that were set up for them. Then we did another really fun one that Jenny J started at UCLA, and she was interested in tying the environment to food choices. And so we had some classes, and we got students in our classrooms changing their diet or reporting that they changed their diet when we connected it to animal rights and welfare and global warming and things like that. And at Stanford, we just did this study with athletes trying to tie a more plant-based diet to performance, and how much did they fear their performance being diminished if they moved to more plant-based stuff. So we had 12 runners and 12 weightlifters, and we had them eat vegan versus some plant-based alternative meats versus omnivorous, and nobody's performance was diminished. They ran just as fast and they lifted just as much weight. And we just tried to build this out to MCURC, and this is almost the close of my talk. I started creating this slide, and it's kind of fun. I was trying to show here the students at the top across the different universities, the chefs that they worked with, and I decided I didn't have room to put all the faculty in there that they worked with, and I'm going to have to be pretty honest here. I tried to lead this charge, and I screwed up, actually. So as much as I aspire to have this all work perfectly, it doesn't work perfectly yet. So some of the students were in a rush, the chefs didn't have time, the faculty weren't mentoring as much as we had hoped, and as much as I love this model, it's harder to pull off than it looks. And I think 10 years in, we still need to do some work here. There were some students involved in scaling this up across universities. And there were participants saying, I went to get the plant-based thing, and all I found was tofu with a salad bar. I said, no, there's chefs making this. And we weren't talking enough. And we said, oh, we had problems getting the human subjects approval. Well, why don't you get your faculty member on this? Well, they told me they were really busy and they can't help me right now. So it's a great idea. We're 10 years into it and we still haven't nailed it, but we have multiple publications. And I think, rather than considering this a failure, I consider this an opportunity to say, okay, next time before we start, we need to make sure the chef's on board, is talking to the student, the faculty is there to back them up, or you can't be in this because if you really want to pull this off, you have to maximally be engaged in those 24 principles of the menus of change and this model that I love so much. It's got to be delicious. You should have a nutrition professor so it can be healthy and environmentally sustainable and the social justice and the multidisciplinary thing. I think that's my last slide. Yes.
Yeah, that's so great. And I just want to comment in between here, which is just to say that it is a learning about how to conduct this research, but I love that we are trying. And I love that people are showing up and saying, as a chef or a student or a sustainability manager, or nutrition manager, I want to participate in research, because this is sort of a thread that we're seeing across this conference, is that we have to be in dialogue and we have to be working kind of across silos. And if academics were only trying to influence behavior change toward more sustainable diets in a silo, it may not taste delicious, right? And that's where chefs come in. Or chefs might be designing a menu and it may not be as sustainable as it could be, and that's where sustainability managers come in. And then from the idea of a kind of a student and academic perspective, it's really important that students have an opportunity to conduct living laboratory research and not just do theoretical projects, but actually conduct live research like we'll be hearing from Mira. So this next project I will just kind of queue up quickly before passing to Lexi, which is, this is a style of a project where it was a research sprint. So this was a chef-led project where Christopher's project kind of followed more of a clinical trial model in a way, where we had students on a certain diet for a period of time, measuring their athletic performance, any changes based on what diet they were on, an omnivore diet or plant-based. This project that is coming up next was really born out of the executive chef committee. So the chefs were saying, what would happen if we actually measured the impact of what we do every day in the kitchen, which is creatively utilize product that would otherwise be wasted. And so I will pass it to Lexi to take it from there, but this is a project that is still in the final data analysis, so you're all the first people to hear about this project, and we will continue to analyze and compile all of the impact data, and we will have something to share as a toolkit in the fall. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Lexi.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. Hello, everyone. I'm Lexi Ronska. I'm the Sustainability Director for Boston University Dining Services, and we were one of the locations participating in this study. So when it comes to repurposing food, I think we all know that there's a goal of repurposing food to prevent the food that goes into your trash stream. And I think especially for dining operations where your food waste stream is the trash, whether it goes to landfill or incineration, there's a clear understanding that you are minimizing negative environmental impacts. But there's often a question on the value of taking the time to repurpose ingredients, maybe if you're already diverting your food waste, whether it be to animal feed or composting or anaerobic digestion. But really important to look at those upstream environmental impacts that you can minimize through utilizing something twice, 3 times. That way you're not wasting the transportation and production and storage and all of those resources and emissions tied up in that entire process. So that, I think, tees up really the overall benefits to why you repurpose, but Chef Matt's going to go into some of those operational questions that we battle on if it's worth it.
Right, and just to give some context to this project, when Abby came on board, she met with myself and Christina Batondo from Stanford University, and she said, what do you guys want to work on? And we were like, wow, no one's ever asked us what we want to work on. So we kind of put our heads together and we were like, we're in food, but sustainability is such an important thing moving forward. And college students are so much more educated these days about sustainability and their impact and on climate and whatnot. And we were like, well, let's kind of shift gears and let's work on something that's good for the planet. And we were like, let's look at our own operations and really dig deep and see how we can make an impact. So, we came up with this repurposing project and we went into our operations and we did a 4-week research sprint and recipe testing and really had fun with it. And that was the biggest thing for us is we had fun with it. So, some of the questions and...
Do you want to switch this slide? I think we're sharing a clicker, right? Okay, great, thanks.
So, repurposing food, is it worth it? There are many things that come into play. There's downstream, upstream impact, there's budget management, there's complex menu planning, and every day, there's a pivot, right? You're seeing product that's left over on the daily basis, so you're wanting to use that up quickly, right? There's quality and consistency challenges. We always want to make sure that the food we're putting out is of great quality and it tastes great. Inventory and storage management, you may not use some of the inventory because you're repurposing a product so that, the ordering may be skewed for a day or two and whatnot. Regulatory and safety considerations, we always want to, take that into consideration. Any repurposed items we use, we want to make sure that we're handling it in a safe way. We're cooling it down in a safe way, and then we're repurposing it in a safe way. A big one for all of our organizations these days is labor shortages, right? We're working with a very small amount of labor, of skilled labor, and just depending on what kind of model that you're working with your organization. I know for us, we work with a lot of student workers. It's 85% of our workforce, so our skilled labor workforce is very slim. And then employee engagement. You have to get your employees engaged in the on the ship and in the same direction, right? So some may not be on board with you, but you have to kind of take the time to train them, kind of get the messaging down, and that kind of ties into the last point is consumer perceptions, right? What will the consumer think? And I think, Lexi, your BU has done a great job of kind of doing that message. And if you want to speak on maybe some of the things that you've done, I know you've done a lot of repurposing dinners. If you want to share an example of that, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. So as far as consumer perceptions, I think our marketing team, I can say, when we first said, okay, we have all these repurposed things and we want to be really flashy and say we're doing all of it, was a little bit nervous. And so we went back and really decided what's the best way for us to communicate what we're doing and how will it be received most effectively. So we held 2 catered events this past year, one for senior university administrators and one for students as a part of our Earth Month programming, in addition to the work we were doing with this project. And with both of those dinners, we served really delicious multi-course meals that people were just enjoying as normal food that they would at any catered event. And then it was at the end of the meal that we really talked to students about how things were utilized once, twice, 3 times to create these items and where we repurposed them from other places in the dining hall or other operations. And they really understood the culinary ingenuity and creativity that our team was able to have. And it really changed their perception about what is traditionally considered waste and how you can repurpose things, and hopefully made them think how they can, in their own dorms or kitchens, utilize things that they might ordinarily scrape into their waste bin. So really framing it as you enjoyed food, and food doesn't have to be straight from the grocery store and being made into something new every single time.
Okay, next slide. All right. So the goal of the project was develop a toolkit of operational approaches and cost-effective plant-forward recipes that showcased the triple bottom line benefits of creative culinary utilization in university dining operations and other institutional food service settings. So there was three different objectives. One was to develop a toolkit that shared operational case studies from the organizations that were part of the study. Of course, tips on establishing a repurposing program. And the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the better you're able to execute that. And then, of course, my favorite part, recipes, right? What chef doesn't like recipes and showing off your talented team? So.
Yeah, and then really highlighting the economic and environmental impacts and benefits of repurposing to really tell that story. I think, as Chef Matthew said, everyone is already doing it in kitchens, but we're not necessarily understanding the bigger picture of why and touting that story of the positive impact you're having.
And then, of course, share operational best practices, right? What's gonna work in your operation, what pitfalls there might be, just making sure that you're putting into practice those operational efficiencies that are meeting sustainability goals. And the biggest thing is those sustainability goals. So as far as the project overview, we wanted to include recipes that incorporated at least 51% of ingredients that would be otherwise wasted. Abby and her team conducted surveys and interviews with dining staff and students to evaluate the economic, environmental, and social impacts. And I think this was a really great part of the study because each operation's different, right? We all have different challenges. And I think one of the biggest thing, I remember one of these, when we were talking about, what do we want to measure? And we had talked about trash pickup and things like that. And I was like, hold on a second. Our trash is shared by the dorms, and I was like, that's going to kind of skew, those kind of findings and stuff like that. So, we were able to maybe just shelve that and then maybe just pick, universities that have their own, their own trash pickup. The thematic analysis of qualitative benefits, and then the quantitative analysis of food waste and cost. Of course, we want to make sure that we understand that.
So for measurable outcomes, food waste being one of the most obvious outcomes, really looking at that pre-consumer food waste that is minimized and able to be repurposed. Environmental impacts, looking at carbon and water savings, cost savings, or perhaps cost implications, because with some recipes, maybe there was an increased labor cost or increased food cost, but looking at opportunities to reduce food purchasing, reduce waste disposal costs at universities where that data was able to be captured, and then look at the implications of labor. And then social impact, really looking at the staff engagement and morale boosts and customer satisfaction.
All right, and then the project team. This was a very diverse project team. When we first started this, I thought it was just going to be a bunch of chefs just developing recipes and whatnot, but it ended up being, research collaborators, sustainability advisors, dining directors, research assistants. It was great to, to work with the fellows, especially Jessica, kind of doing the heavy lifting of getting all the information together. So it was great, and then. The participating sites, as you can see from there, some really great universities from coast to coast, West Coast, East Coast, and of course then North Texas, right? So, and then internationally, we had two universities that were on, University of Reading and University of Bristol, and I think that was important too, just from a having just an international participant on that as well. So.
All right, so looking at the environmental impact analysis, when we looked at repurposing ingredients, we really looked at the downstream impacts of the repurposed item and the upstream impacts of the food item that was displaced. So we could really calculate both sides of the spectrum and really understand the full picture. Sorry, I can't read on the screen. So at Boston University, we did 3 recipes as a part of the program, but just looking at one in particular, it's hard to call it a recipe, but we did flavored water, where we took the pineapple cores from our pineapple for our fruit salad, that we had plenty of cores every day, and use that to flavor our water. So just doing that and serving that about 20 times over the course of the research sprint, we avoided over 170 pounds of food waste and was able to repurpose that, which otherwise we would have been purchasing lemons or limes or other fruit and using that solely for the purpose of flavoring the water. So looking at both BU and the University of North Texas, just a few of the recipes that were produced during the research sprint, and not very much. So going back to the conversation about collective impact yesterday, each of these recipes were served from 2 times to about 20 times for a very short period of time for particular meal periods, but had clear sustainability impacts. So when we look at the carbon emissions and the greenhouse gas impact, it was equivalent to driving 281 miles with the reductions, and then the equivalent of 7 8-minute showers. So very significant with, again, just small scale work. So really thinking if we captured the efforts we're doing every day with all of the repurposing work and all of the other institutions that are a part of MCURC, that impact is very vast.
And then from a financial impact of repurposing ingredients, we kind of took, you know, if we were going to put in a repurposed item, there was always a displaced menu item that we had to take into consideration. So we looked at the cost of that and the cost per serving, and then just calculated out the 4-week recipe sprint to get, you know, a true cost and see where we were at on that. So, and then Lexi can talk about the savings.
Yeah, so at BU, just looking at 2 of our recipes, we did, as I mentioned, the pineapple flavored water, and then we also made a vinaigrette out of pineapple cores, just on food cost savings alone, so not looking into waste hauling costs or anything like that. We had almost $3,500 in cost savings from just the average food costs. So very significant, again, served for very short periods of time, but really shows the large-scale impacts that simple repurposing swaps like using trim for your water can really have for your program.
And then qualitative insights. So what did we learn? So, and what did we take away from repurposing? Repurposing can promote creativity and engagement, which was very evident in all of our operations. The one thing with repurposing, it can lead to increased labor costs to start. So you really have to think about how you train your staff and kind of get them up to speed on that. So there will be an upfront labor cost, but there will also be an instant reduction in food purchases. So you'll see the savings on the back end on that. And then one of the important things, and I always, I love to promote this, is that driving team morale and a sense of pride, right? If everybody's on board, you know, we're all going in the same direction, it definitely adds to your engagement as well.
And then I think we've talked about many times over in this conversation, but it reduces pre-consumer food waste. There is the caveat that post-consumer food waste remains a problem, and looking at post-consumer food waste of the repurposed menu items wasn't a part of the scope of this project. But at least tackling pre-consumer waste is very impactful. And then, as I discussed previously, it really reframes the conversation of waste in a positive way and makes people look at it more as a resource and not something that can be used once and then has to be discarded.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much. So, toolkit forthcoming in the fall. Thank you, Lexi and Matt, for sharing. And I want to actually also mention our research collaborator on that project, ReFed, who's having their annual summit right now. They've been instrumental in working with us on that project and helped us a lot with the environmental and cost analysis. Selena Mao has been a really instrumental partner with us, and that's another beauty of working with our university research collaborative is having our outside organizations that support our research as well. I'm going to pass it over to Mira.
All right, so imagine you're going to your favorite restaurant. They've got probably 30 menu choices, and how many of you just pick the same food every time you go in? This is something I think this diet diversity research, we heard a lot about the importance of diet diversity this morning, and I think Mary even asked the question, like, how do we get this diversity out? How do we get people to eat more diverse foods? And so this project is just an example of a future research that we were going to start. So we have no results to share, but the idea is that, well, I'll back up a little bit, sorry. I'm a student fellow, and so it's very exciting for me. This is my first year here at the summit, my first year being a part of MCURC, and I think the most enjoyable part of this whole thing is I got to meet with our sustainability director, with the dining head, with our executive chef, with the VP for resident life, and everybody at UMD was very supportive and excited and eager to conduct research. And so I think that's really the fun part about this organization, is the collaboration and the networking. So this research project will be based on the Future 50 Foods report that was developed, and this is trying to promote diverse plant foods that are both nutritionally rich as well as environmentally sustainable. And so currently, as we heard earlier again, we're really eating very few foods, and there are thousands of different plant varieties we could be eating. So has anyone here ever cooked with fonio or bambara beans or nopales? Raise your hands. Oh, wow, okay, well that's exciting. I bought fonio for the first time before coming here just so I could say, yes, I bought it and cooked with it. But it is a superfood. It is actually indigenous to West Africa. It is great for the environment because it doesn't require tilling. It grows in very depleted soils, and it's also packed full of nutrients. Similarly, bambara beans is native to West Africa. Nopales is very common in Mexican foods, but these are foods that most people aren't eating, and in our dining halls, they're not being served. As Abby mentioned, the great part about using the dining halls as a living laboratory is we're impacting college-aged students who are gonna get these new experiences, these new tastes, develop, an affinity for these tastes, grow up to be purchasers of these new foods. And we're affecting the farming. If the more demand we create for more diverse foods, then the more we're supporting small farmers who are growing these crops. So it's really helping on multiple levels. This research project is gonna be based really trying to move forward the whole planetary health model. This image kind of shows that individual knowledge and awareness and action that humans take is so, extremely linked to Earth's health. It's a very, we already covered this morning. I thought it was a fantastic presentation about the importance of the microbiome and eating diverse foods, but there's such a one-to-one correlation between human health and planet health, rising rates of chronic disease, rising, climate issues, decline in mental health, decline in biodiversity. We have increased healthcare costs due to all of these non-communicable diseases that are so prevalent. And when we increase our gut microbiome, we're also increasing the soil health. They're so connected. The more diverse foods we eat means we're growing more diverse foods, so we're improving soil as well. So now let's hone in. We understand the importance of this research. So at UMD specifically, we looked at our baseline purchasing and emissions. This is from 2017. And we saw that we have a big way to go. We have room for improvement here. So we're hoping to move those numbers. The theory behind diet choice, as we know, it's a behavioral science. It's hard to change. We generally know what's good, and it's hard to do what's good. So we're looking to impact the constructs of motivation, opportunity, and ability, specifically at the community level, because in dining halls and with college students, it's a lot about social norms, about peer influence, and about their environment. They're stressed out, they're tired, they're not necessarily thinking. We want to make it easy for them when they walk into the dining hall. The healthy choice, the environmentally sustainable choice, the diverse choice is kind of the one they're guided to subconsciously. So that's what this intervention is going to be about. We're going to look at, we're going to start with focus groups. We're going to learn from the students, what do they care about? What would help them to make that the better choice? We heard from Sophie yesterday about messaging. We are relying heavily on the WRI playbook for dining interventions nudges that we can use to test. So our goals are to pilot some of these interventions and measure the take rate of diverse new plant-based foods that students are actually taking, and then we're going to measure the food waste so we can see, are they consuming it or are they wasting it? And then the end goal is that this will be replicated, hopefully, across multiple universities, and then we can create an operational toolkit to help add to the research. We want to add to the research that's out there to see which interventions are useful and can be implemented. And so we are just going to begin. This is a tentative timeline. We'll begin our focus groups this fall and then test out the interventions in the spring.
Yeah, great. And this is a great example of a model that's starting at one pilot university and spreading. And another great example of working with research collaborators, as you mentioned, World Resources Institute, also a research collaborator of MCURC. And I heard yesterday you were already talking with them about potential interventions that might fit for this study. So this is a great body of work that we're hoping to share with the industry so that you can then think about the implications of this for your operation. So thank you, Mira, for leading the project.
Good morning. I'm Michael. I am the benefit of everything they're all doing because we take everybody later. I'm with Food at Google. Prior to that, I was 15 years at Boston College, where Menus of Change was really instrumental. Kelly Toops was a nutrition intern with us. She's now the director of Old Ways. She and I took the Menus of Change infographic and we dialed into the menus every single month to do uninformed but nudges, even before we really started doing testing. But now that I'm at Google, we feed all of our employees for free every single day, except Saturday and Sunday, all over the world. Well, at the data centers, we feed them. So it's a fairly large operation. It's a little bit different because we have stacked generations. So everybody right now is working with Gen Z in the colleges. There's a lot of data with millennials. We now have a lot of Gen Zs. There are a few boomers left, mostly X, millennial, Gen Zs coming in, alphas 10 years away. We think about that. We think about what they're eating, what they're doing, because we're not there to be a free lunch program at work. We're there to be the heart of the culture at work. So you can see from this slide, our goals are not about feeding people. Our goals are about enabling people to live better lives and to do better jobs and to be more engaged and interactive at work. These are the numbers. We do 240,000 meals a day in 57 countries. It takes about 13,000 associates. So I work for Google. There are 40 of us who work for Food at Google. There are 13,000 vendor partners out in the world who are actually doing operations. So we work in conjunction to really build impact. The micro kitchens are as big as this stage. Each micro kitchen has a full 2-head manual espresso machine as well as coffee. But we make very specific moves within the micro kitchen to make the better choice the easier choice. We embrace behavioral science, we embrace food choice architect, and we'll get into that a little bit deeper. So how do we support the Menus of Change? We do a lot of everything, but we don't necessarily post the infographic. We don't do a lot of internal marketing to our users. We call our users the people who come through and eat our food. We find that often has a polarizing effect, and so therefore we use different methods. Dish labeling work with Stanford and Yale is a huge impact. Where things are on the line. As a chef, I always put the vegetable and rice first because it's cheap. You put the chicken and the beef at the end so there's no room on their plate to put it, right? But that's a different reason than why you do it from a behavioral science standpoint. We don't do anything that doesn't bring them along the journey with us, though. So everybody here has said it, and I'm going to reemphasize it. You must lead with deliciousness. If the food does not taste good, if the food does not look good, no amount of how beautiful flower your language on a dish card is going to work, right? We use a lot of B-side techniques. We use a lot of choice architect. We've dug deep into training, and we view ourselves as a learning laboratory. So fonio is a great example. So I've been told that fonio, when it burns, has a molecular structure on your pan that is uncleanable. Wouldn't have happened at home in my own pan when I was testing it, but so I've been told. So we do test things. We fly things in and out. We see what the response is. We have some behavioral science people who are tracking numbers. We're doing plate waste interventions, although I'm not so excited about it because it's 9 grams, and if you think in terms of 9 grams, that's not even, it's like a third of an ounce. So the behavioral science intervention is effective for a super waster, but not for a normal waster. And we're not going to go down that road today. I don't have enough time, but so we lead with deliciousness. We have a very specific hierarchy of choice. Closer to the ground is better. Moderately modified is then used throughout, but then things that are super processed, and a lot of stuff is coming out this week about ultra processed plant-based food. That is with moderation, care, and specific nature. Like, we never want to take an analog animal, vegetarian beef analog and put it, that's super processed, and put it next to our umami burger, which is a 40% mushroom, 60% beef blend. So again, we've worked with Yale and Stanford on this. We have a very specific training, although I just saw from Matson some AI work that's doing some amazing stuff that with the right prompt, and they've written prompts for us, so our teams are going to start testing that and see how AI helps with the flowery languages. I'm prepared to be stunned. And then what are we learning that works? We've learned that familiarity is really what drives people. What it's made from is really millennial and Gen Z specific. They really want to know. They want to know where the fonio came from. They want to know that it was a female harvested in West Africa and that it was, environmentally sound. And then they know what it's like. They want to know, can we sample it? Can we taste it? We are a free program, so everybody takes everything if they want to, but we need to mitigate waste. So we do smaller portions specifically. From a B-Sci and choice architect standpoint, like in a micro kitchen, engineers require Red Bull. I don't know if you all know that, but engineers do require Red Bull and Diet Coke. But that goes in a glass refrigerator under the frost, below the frost. So the refrigerators are frosted at the midpoint, and pickles and whole, hard-boiled eggs and carrot sticks go above, and then iced tea and lemonade, and then below is any of the high sugary drinks. In the drawers, it might be the half a pineapple jerky at the top, and then at the bottom would be, you'd have to reach all the way down to get the Oreos. So it's not just like I'm going to open that first drawer and get Oreos. I have to make the effort to go down. We really are very specific about where things go on the line. We're very specific about how things are worded, and we're specific about what portion size is available for people to engage with. They can take as much as they want, but make them take more. So if my personal opinion of Balanced Plant Forward, which is what we embrace as a program, is meat still has a place at the table, but it should only be 2 or 3 ounces. It should be an additive, not the center. In a Western, Northern Hemisphere culture, meat has really become a prominence because of socioeconomics, and we're trying to fight against that. Like, if we make the best bean patty, will they take that instead of a burger? And then there are 6 levers for the activating better beverage behavior. We always have spa water as the front choice, and then there are always bevies or water filter systems. I've only seen 2 fountain heads in my 4 years at Google, and one was at a data center, and data centers are very different. They're like rural Alabama. In a data center is where, when we started posting vegan on the dish cards, we got an irate user saying, "Why is my orange juice vegan?" And the response was, "Orange juice has always been vegan. Please have as much bacon as you'd like." So presentation's key. Our chefs do a great job of presenting. We are finding that plated helps with plate mitigation, but then there's a labor rise to it, right? And plate waste mitigation by being able to really control the portion, but then there's a labor rise. And then there's this choice. There's a constant flux and battle between here's what you get, here's how you can customize, and what you can personalize. And customize and personalize, how we use it is, customize is I give you a burrito that's fully made and you can go put 4 or 5 sauces on it. Personalized is you walk down the line and tell me everything you want in that burrito. And those are very different, and how people interact with those are very different. But they make how we then put a portion scoop on the other side for the rice or the beans is very specific. To do so, we had to train our staff. To be a balanced plant forward program, we really had to train our staff. We found that the cooks could not create the dishes that enticed the users to move off of the animal protein. So in a long journey, it was actually one of my very first in-person meetings. I was hired the week before the pandemic, so then I was sent home and didn't see anybody face-to-face for 18 months, was about Plant Forward Kitchen that we were building in conjunction with the Culinary Institute of America. It is now a Pro Chef series. I downloaded last night the numbers. I think it was 1 a.m. So these are pretty current. We have a total of 889 people in program of the training. 504 are totally completed, and this is in the last 2 years. And we charge nobody money. We pay them wages, and they get a certificate from the Culinary Institute of America at the end. So there's 350 hourlies. There's 400 managers who have already been through the program. And what we've done is a train-the-trainer model. So we have mentors who train trainers, who train cohorts. We find cohorts of 6 to 9 people to be the best. It's a 60-hour program over 6 months. And I'm really enthused by Latin America's embracement of it. They are just moving forward at speed in Sao Paulo and Argentina. My original guidance was only large sites that have over 1,000 people in them. And Argentina said, we only have 250, but we want to do it. And so we did it. Mexico City's got 380, they're doing it. It's really impactful in that it's changed people's perception, people being our cooks on the line, and how they interact and engage with the user, and how they personalize it. We've heard that a lot. We worked with the Food for Climate League for 2 years on intrinsic motivation to really get the pattern and the model for how to engage people. We had, from a union standpoint of hourly employees, we could not demand that they take it, so we had to create FOMO, right? And you have to create what's in it for me, for people to actually care. So we found that cultural, historical resonated with people. Oh, my grandfather made that. Oh, my abuela made that. It's like, awesome, let's latch into that. How do we get you to make what your abuela made and make that a recipe to get it on the menu? And that starts to really resonate. So we've had enormous success. This is actually the learning map. It is 18 hours of online learning. It's a really good program. It's owned by Ecolab now. I can say that because we're in the Ecolab auditorium, right? Shout out.
Yeah.
It was called Lobster Inc., INK. I don't quite understand that name. It's South African. They're great to work with, though. It's a really robust online training program. So we've got level 1 done. We've got, my goal is 1,000 people by the end of the year. We're on target for that. We've got level 2 that will only be management required. But it's 18 hours of online, and then it's 42 hours of mentor, trainer-led, in-person cohorts of 6, which is, when you think about 13,000 employees in 57 countries, it's a pretty hard breakdown, but that's how engaged we are, and that's where we're going. So I couldn't be more professionally fulfilled. I'm excited to be on stage with these people. Like, this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years of my career. I'm stoked.
Great, thank you, Michael. And Google really has been a founding member of MCURC from the beginning, and it really is interesting to see the connection and the applicability of the research that we're doing in a business environment, and to see you're able to apply a lot of the food choice architecture and behavioral strategies, like you're saying, The staff engagement piece is huge, and I think that's why what we're seeing when we are, the most successful projects really actively engage the dining team and the chefs, and making sure that they understand the why behind these efforts to make operations more sustainable and healthful. And that's really huge. And the Plant Forward Kitchen Training Program is available, I think, now to other companies, and we're really grateful for the work we've done with Google and with Lobster Inc., now Ecolab, in order to make that more accessible. And I think it's the level 2 training digs further into the why of sustainability.
And ethnic dining, four different ethnic.
Oh yeah, oh great. And so we have more of a global perspective. So lots on that. I want to start with just a kind of a tee-off question, and then we'll get into audience questions. We've been hearing about the importance of taste, and I think that I'd love to hear just perspectives on, like, we know that the taste-focused labels, that was a really important MCURC study that led to the Edgy Veggies Toolkit that you guys can check in on our website. But just the importance of taste and options, what are we doing out there? And I know that you guys are doing some interesting things at BU too, to give people a chance to taste things. In terms of messaging for different audiences, I just want you all to kind of speak to the importance of taste as a starting point.
Taste. I'll go first since I'm here, yeah. I will say, I don't think we've done this study yet, but at one point somebody made some labels that said MCURC on them, and they say these are healthy and environmentally sustainable and they taste good. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe you screwed up. You were supposed to say taste first. And they said, okay, quick, we'll change the labels, we'll make new labels. I said, but wait, did we study it? We could. We could actually randomize the names. And I tell you what we'll find when we do this is not everybody is the same.
Right.
So I think everything should be unapologetically delicious. But I think some people actually do it for health, and some do it for the environment, and most do it for taste. But it's sort of having those 3 pillars available, and you just can't mess with the taste. It's got to taste great. But very fun thinking about personalizing it for the different clients that we have, the different students, the different Googlers. And so hugely important, but something we could study and have data on, because we have these living labs. So I'm always anxious to work with all these partners on figuring out stuff like that. Next.
Awesome. So taste is always a priority with all of our different sustainable menu item initiatives. So a couple of examples. BU is a hockey school. So every year for a women's hockey game, we do a chili contest where each of our dining halls creates their own chili. They all pull out of a hat a different protein. And historically, the beef chili wins hands down every year. Well, this year we had a delicious vegan chili with a vegan queso, and to all of our shock, that was voted the most popular. So really leading with what is the most delicious and putting that forward, and not putting it on the side and saying, well, this is the vegan one, so if you're vegan, you can have it. But really leading with that flavor profile is always successful. Additionally, when we look at our food waste initiatives, we heard from a lot of students that they were wasting food because it just wasn't the flavor profile they were looking for that meal. So we have a tasting program where students can request a tasting spoon of menu items. That way they can either see if it's what they're in the mood for, or feel confident that they can try a new type of food or a new type of cuisine without feeling the guilt of waste if that's something that they might experience. And then additionally, I think when we do different types of dinners or student engagement events, we have a number of times done a plant-based event, and that's what it is, and we just lead with delicious food, and everyone really enjoys what it is and really opens their mind up to all of those possibilities.
So as a chef, taste is very important, and I think, and people ask, we come to these conferences and they're like, so what's the secret sauce? Like, what are you guys doing at UNT that makes, people come to, Mean Greens Cafe and our allergen-free dining hall, Kitchen West, and it's like, because we lead with taste. We are a minority serving institution, which means we have a lot of Hispanic students, we have African American students, we have a large population of Indian students that are in our engineering department and our computer science department. So we kind of look at the demographic and be like, okay, let's play into the demographic. Like, so we do a lot of special events on our campus that are culturally diverse, and that's when we really shine. We do Diwali and Holi Fest. We do Black History Month. We just won an ACUFS gold medal for our Hispanic Heritage Month lunch series that we did last year. So we definitely the taste is always forefront. And just going back to what Michael was talking about, tapping into the associates that you have in-house. A majority of our full-time staff are of Hispanic heritage and background. So we tap into those and we talk to them and like Michael said, we ask them about their upbringing and kind of have them share with us their experiences with food and talk about what dishes resonate with them and that's all about the buy-in and really engaging your employees and really getting everybody excited to kind of move the ship forward.
Well, just real quick, I'm just going to say that our taste buds actually evolve over time. So we might not like it the first time we try it, but if we try something a handful of times, we might start to develop a taste for it. So different perspective there.
Interesting.
It's interesting. So we're a global company, Google. I think you've heard of us, a small startup. But we also are by site global, as is every college now. So for us, taste is no longer a northern western hemisphere focus. Taste must now include everything, and we need to get it right. So we had a really interesting moment this year. The team in India, and India is burgeoning, it's huge. We've got one building, it's 8,000 people, right? They eat 3 meals a day. They built a playbook, and we now call it a lookbook because playbook is overwrought. And they broke India into its 5 regions, and they broke each region into the flavors, and they broke each flavor into the ingredients, and now they're building recipes. We have a lot of Indian engineers, like UNT. They're probably coming from UNT if we're doing our job right. And I heard they didn't want South and North Indian food on the same offer. And so I really dug into it. I had some focus sessions, and what we found was, no, actually, we like North and South together. We get to make the choice. What we don't want is a South Indian bread with a North Indian dish or a North Indian sauce with a South Indian dish because we weren't getting it right. So we pivoted. We're now building a Mediterranean playbook with the Future Food Institute. We're building other playbooks that are very balanced, plant forward. There's no reason for us to build a barbecue playbook. People would love it, but we're probably not going to do it. But getting it right is critical, and we are all a long way away from getting it right. And that comes with training and inspiration and tapping into those kind of experience.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of authenticity is a theme that I'm hearing, and sort of meeting the consumers where they are with things that are familiar to them and really getting it right. And that taste kind of flavor profile is so important, but it's way broader than it used to be. Do we
Right,
have
it's not, I'm sorry, it's not Latin food anymore. It's Sao Paulo, and it's Argentina, and
specific.
it's Mexican, and
Right,
we don't
right.
get away with saying it's Latin.
Does anyone have an audience question? I will ask another. Go for it.
Hello. In the spirit of Christopher, I'm right there, so I'll go first. So all of you seem to have these really rich partnerships, and in the university world, we're all so busy. Pardon my pun, our plates are all very full.
Haha.
So how can we encourage engagement, leverage partnerships in a world where we're so saturated with the day-to-day work? How can we get these things started and get people interested, involved, buying into this?
So from my perspective, students are key, right? And so I actually use the students to get at fellow faculty that won't talk to me. Like, hey, can you collaborate with me? No, not today. Too busy, maybe later. And there's a student who wants mentoring, and they say, oh, I would like something from the environmental side and from the nutrition side. And so I take them on, and I get to talk to that other faculty member. So if you start seeding this with the students who are just idealistic and they want research experience or they want other things to put on their resume, and they're free, okay, let's say that again, they're free, and they will work really hard to get an honors project or something else. It's just for me, it's been a great connection that the chefs or the collaborating faculty will stop because they're there to serve the students, and then I end up with a collaboration that I might not have had otherwise. That would be my tip.
Yeah, I'd say start small conversations, and just build from there, and I think, we're all busy and whatnot, but, as you go into your operations and stuff like that, when you talk about messaging and stuff like that, like, I think there's been a kind of a common theme the last couple of days is that I've heard the term storytelling. So I think as you can tell the story, and I know this has helped us kind of talking to our students, is that as we message things out, if there's a story attached to it, it makes more impact and it gets everybody on board on the same level.
Yeah. I will just build on that from wearing my research program manager hat, working with all of these folks. It's figuring out what's the currency for that stakeholder. So for example, for academic faculty, Christopher reminded me, it's academic publication. That's their currency. So this is a way in for Mira as both a student and, for both students getting research experience and faculty having publications, that's their currency. So speaking and leading with that. Whereas chefs, they want to be motivated to make change, and they want to show that they are a player and a change maker in this. And so getting their buy-in and bringing them along. Lexi is reporting on the sustainability efforts of Boston University and dining services. So her currency is actually getting data and making sure that the staff is participating. So I think finding it from that way, and maybe motivation is a nicer term than currency, but it is really reflecting on that, going into those conversations and starting small, but thinking about what is going to motivate them to say yes, because I think everyone does have a reason to participate.
I would also just add, if you're looking at developing partnerships within your team or your own institution, really looking at what are the key cultural priorities of your group, and if you can add any of your priorities to be sustainability related, I think that can really set the tone that this culture, sustainability, is going to be thought about in discussions, and so it sets an expectation that people are used to it. And then I think as well, if you're looking for partnerships outside of just your institution, oftentimes taking the time to develop those partnerships can save you time in the long run, because you're able to share challenges, learn best practices, and make it easier for yourself to advance things that you've maybe been struggling on yourself.
I have one comment. It's just with them. It's what's in it for me. That's what drives people, really.
True.
Yeah. Thank you all. Wonderful answers.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for this. So I am going to have a different angle on what she just said to ask about your theory of change. And the theory of change states that, okay, we try this at a period of their life that's very influential, and then they can take that and apply that through the rest of their life. But I would counter what you said, and when I think back to my university days, I never had more time than I had there. I certainly don't have that amount of time in my real, post-grad life. So I'm curious, when you're in the university system and the meal plan is kind of your easy option, when you're at Google and the food is provided to you for free, you don't really have to take a lot of effort. And Christopher, you were talking about no labeling. So some of this stuff comes to the students or comes to the employees without them really understanding what's behind it. So how do we really expect people to take this into the rest of their life and apply it?
That's a good one. Can I start with that? Only because I have an interesting and unique opportunity to I formerly worked for Airbnb as a corporate food service manager. And when the pandemic hit, all of the people who had been getting free food, like at Google, were reaching out and they were like, what? We don't get to eat all this beautiful, delicious, healthy food that was already the easy choice for us. now we're doing dishes at home, right? Like, this stinks. And so that was funny. But I think my reflection there was like, they were desiring the things that we had made. And I think the hope really succinctly here is just that that's the same, is that because it's so delicious and they have come to crave those healthy, sustainable options, when they are out in their own life, even if they don't have options, and maybe they also felt great because they were eating healthy. And so now they're busy and they have a job and they're doing dishes at home, they might be reflecting to still make those choices because we made them desirable.
Yeah, and we actually have 16 or 17 teaching kitchens around the world where people, Googlers, just sign up for free classes. We did pivot in the pandemic to go electronic totally. We do a lot of messaging there. And I think people are earnest. Well, nobody has time. Sleep is overrated. People are earnest, though. And you get the right earnest people moving in the right direction, and then focus it, right? The problem is focus. You can't all pull on a rope in a different direction. Nobody goes anywhere. But if you can all pull one way, you start moving mountains. So.
And I think making yourself available, I am a lifelong restaurant and hotel guy, right? I'm a chef. In kitchens, never dealt with the public, just steered away from that. Scared to death to talk to clients, you know. But when I got to UNT, I was forced. I was forced to get out and to talk to students, you know. I was blessed to work with a gentleman, Christopher Williams, that, you know, runs our plant-based dining facility. He's here, Chris. But he was the one that really taught me how to talk to students and really get out there and be engaging, because the biggest thing is that you have to engage the students in conversations, and that's the biggest thing. And then if you can engage the students in conversations, you can get them to buy into what you're doing. And I think that's most of the how we've been successful in promoting, you know, plant-based dining on our campus. So yeah, it's just, don't be afraid to talk to them. They're not going to bite, right? I mean, they're very open and they're very opinionated. And I think in the age of social media, I think they have all the resources at their hands to, you know, educate themselves and, you know, get on TikTok and find a recipe short and stuff like that. But I think as you know, as dining operations, I think we're moving towards that where we're actually, you know, developing, you know, those tools to be able to put out and for them to follow. So.
Great.
Hi all. This question is open to everyone, but I'm interested when we were discussing behavioral science within your research. How do you address the ethical implications of using behavioral science to those that maybe feel that through that process, some of their vulnerabilities are being exploited? So just generally, how do you navigate those ethical implications?
That's a good question.
I teach a class on that. And actually, that's what Jenny J's class was on. And for me, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to approach this, but I was looking for something outside of health as a message. And we created a class called Food and Society, and all we did was read popular books. And we didn't have any preconceived notions. And I'm not trained in this, so I just want to tell you how much fun this was to teach this class, because I learned so much from the students. We found readings, and we assigned them, but the discussions were led by the students. And a lot of social justice things came up that I wasn't aware of. And the most recent one that I learned from them, let's see if I'm going to get this word right. So people were, no, I'm blanking on the word. So somebody will help me here. Some of the dining halls were making banh mi sandwiches or something else, and the students were irately upset that they had taken them and not done them well. They hadn't done their homework, and they were making them the wrong way.
They weren't authentic with and that's the biggest thing, is being when we develop these culturally diverse menus, we need to focus on being authentic and to really dive in and educate ourselves on doing it authentically well. You know, it's like in Texas, right? It's all about Tex-Mex, right? But, you know, when we do like these Hispanic Heritage Month, we go from country to country, we do our research, we get authentic recipes, we talk to our frontline associates, and we make sure that we are paying homage to the history and the traditions that have been that have been there for hundreds or thousands of years. So it's just being authentic. That's pretty much where.
And I want to bring it back to any moral compunctions with behavioral science, because we are using words on a dish card to be more flowery for balanced plant forward, and meat dishes have a plainer language. So there's no pushing anybody anywhere they don't want to go. We are at first a user choice program. The core value is always, do we have enough for everybody? So we are actually in a discussion right now about, should we start making nutritional guided meals? And my answer is, my nutrition is different than everybody else's on this stage. So my job as a chef and as a leader of chefs is to say, it must be balanced, but it must be satisfactory across the board. And if somebody wants 10 ounces of steak or 12, take it, right? So we're nudging, we're not requiring.
Yeah, and in the universities, all of our studies have to pass the institutional review board. So there's an ethical review for them. But what it often comes down to, like, we aren't guiding, and we might be like reducing the size of a scoop of meat in a burrito from 4 ounces to 3 ounces or 2, right? So there's small choices and nudges, but it is a really good question, and we do take it seriously in terms of getting the review process for the projects.
Thinking along little different lines, like thinking forward, future looking on recipes or menus in restaurants, a lot of times it's, here's your appetizers, salads, poultry, red meat, whatever, and then they have like a seafood section, there might be a vegetarian section. What could that look like in the future if like it was completely mixed up and was all plant forward but still had meat dishes? Given, excuse me, given how much you guys have focused on the labels of specific dishes and focusing on flavor and taste, I was thinking, like, is there now a sweet potato section or something else? So I just love to hear, what your thinking is.
I'll jump in because we're actually taking a fairly holistic look at this very specifically. Restaurants get to carve out their niche, and they get to draw the customer they choose to them, right? That's a restaurant. We are everybody to everything, as is a college. So we are now creating collections. And so a recipe by its nature drives from ingredients that then drive to a recipe. That recipe then could just go into a menu, but then it's fractured, and that's what we've done for years. So if it's Mediterranean based, it needs to have a core main, it needs to have the accoutrement sides, it needs to have an analog vegetarian, vegan. That's our requirement on a menu. And maybe we need 5 of those collections out. I'm in a weird place. You get class breaks, everybody comes at 12:05 in a business and industry, right? They just, 3,000 people in line bitching about the line, and if they just came 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later, it would be no line. But we do build those collections, and they are holistically minded about making sense. They don't have to make sense amongst the collections, but we will not get to, are not choosing to get to the point of, here's your starch, here's your vegetable. We want it to look complete.
It's an interesting question because you could take it so many different ways and lead by, but we don't know what will matter in the future to consumers. Like, is it going to be macronutrients or, by flavor and things like that? But it's an excellent question. I'd love to hear from all of you what your menus will look like.
Everybody come up to the mic.
I think we have time for one quick question.
Okay, I'll make it fast. As a former student worker in dining halls and a current public health nutrition student, something that we talk about very often is what the individual choice versus the collective good, and how there's a huge difference of opinion when it comes to, should people be in charge of their individual diet versus should other people nudge that decision or make that decision for them. And even in my own institution, thinking about the dining halls and the options that are offered, so I'm just really curious from all of you, is there more so what people should be doing? Should it be based on individual choice? Should it be up to the institutions, whether they're universities or huge global companies, or really anything along those lines.
Can I start? I'll just say, as a nutrition scientist, I just think it's impossible to educate everybody about nutrition, and just educating the chefs would be just working with the chefs and having them be in charge and making it delicious, and then the students and the Googlers don't have to worry about it. They just show up, and it's right. So, and if they want to learn, they can dive deeper into it, but that's why these are the greatest partners for me, because I don't have to teach everybody. I got to teach the person serving 1,000 people.
We're about choice. Like, we have this kind of, the engineers write white papers all the time, and a white paper might be 10 pages long, right? And it gets posted internally. We are about choice. We are about individual choice, but then we do things like, we actually have fryers only for falafels. We don't really do French fries. We don't have soda fountains, so we've taken that away. We're a free program, though, so if they really want a soda, they're going to go buy one on the street. They're well-paid engineers. But we have made the decision that we are choice with making decisions that are important to us on that.
I think it's the approach that we take is sort of a combination. I think if you're looking at particular ingredients, you're likely only going to buy one. So if it's from a sustainable procurement side, you as the dining operator decides what makes the most sense. If it's something where there'll be a few options available, then providing the choice. But I think there's a combination. I think one example, this past year we introduced no sugar condiments to our program, and so we did a whole test with our culinary team, tasting them. The ketchup we, through tasting, discovered had a very different taste than Heinz, which people are very used to, so we still have both ketchups. The mustard and barbecue sauce really had no taste difference, so if we were providing something that was healthier, we would provide the healthier version since there was no noticeable difference.
Great question.
It's all about choice, and then we don't limit choice, right? We run a plant-based dining facility, an allergen-free dining facility. Some facilities have soda machines, some do not. We just offer as much as we can offer, and it's up to you to make those choices in your day-to-day life. But we'll talk to you about it, and we'll have conversations about it. What's good, what's better for you, and whatnot. And it all comes down to moderation, right? It's all about moderation. So, we still have chicken fingers and macaroni and cheese, and we still gravitate towards foods that make us feel comfortable. And I think in a college setting, you gravitate towards different things at different times of the year on how you're feeling. You might be homesick, and you might just need to sit down and get some chicken tenders or some foods that are nostalgic to your home. So that's we want to make sure flavor first and a great variety of foods moving forward to please everybody. So
Yeah, it's a good way to end it. So definitely choice forward, but we try to guide and provide a lot of great choices for them to choose from. So with that, I will send you off into lunch. Please enjoy. Lunch will be out in the beverage garden. You can pick up a bento box and disperse where you like. And then we'll meet back here at 2 p.m. for the next general session, which actually digs into consumer insights. Thank you.